The police sirens wailed through Pinecrest Meadows at exactly 6:37 on a Saturday evening. Marcus Reed stood dripping wet in his own backyard, a pool noodle still in his hand, watching Patricia Whitmore point dramatically at his house while speaking urgently into her phone. "Yes, officer. He's created a public nuisance," the noise ordinance clearly states. What Patricia didn't know was that Marcus had spent 12 years writing those exact ordinances as the city's lead building inspector. And the 20-page violation notice she'd been threatening him with for weeks? It was about to become her worst nightmare. Because the pool party she was calling illegal? It was perfectly legal. But her brand new gazebo one she'd been bragging about all summer definitely wasn't. By Monday morning, Patricia would be facing a $17,000 fine from the city. By Wednesday, her real estate license would be under investigation. And by Friday, she'd be begging Marcus for the one thing she'd refused to give him: respect. The HOA bylaws she'd been weaponizing for months would crumble like her illegal gazebo. And the city codes she thought she understood? They were about to teach her the most expensive lesson of her life. If you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, you'll want to hear how this one ends. Marcus Reed had built his dream life in Pinecrest Meadows, but divorce had stripped away almost everything except the house itself. After 12 years as the city's most respected building inspector, he'd started his own contracting business to pay the brutal alimony and child support that left him choosing between groceries and gas money. The house, a modest 3-bedroom colonial with a backyard pool, was his sanctuary and his last connection to his 16-year-old son, Tommy, who visited every other weekend during summer custody. Marcus had installed that pool himself, pulled every permit, followed every code to the letter. It was more than a pool. It was proof he could still build something good. The divorce had happened 2 years ago. When Marcus discovered his ex-wife's affair with her personal trainer, the settlement had been devastating. She got the bigger house, primary custody of Tommy, and half his retirement. Starting over at 40 meant building a business from scratch while maintaining the facade of stability for his son. Tommy's summer visits were sacred. 2 weekends a month. Marcus could pretend life hadn't imploded. They'd grill burgers, play video games, and spend hours in the pool talking about everything and nothing. These moments kept Marcus functioning through the endless cycle of work, bills, and loneliness. The house in Pinecrest Meadows represented his commitment to providing Tommy with a stable, respectable environment, even if it meant eating ramen noodles so he could afford the HOA dues. Pinecrest Meadows embodied suburban Virginia perfection tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, and an HOA that governed everything from mailbox colors to garden gnome placement. The community attracted upper-middle-class professionals who valued order, property values, and the kind of quiet respectability that came with strict adherence to rules. Most residents appreciated the structure, but some, like Patricia Whitmore, wielded those rules like weapons, transforming neighborhood harmony into personal power plays. The HOA meetings had become her courtroom, the violation notices her verdicts. Patricia Whitmore had moved to Pinecrest Meadows 5 years earlier, immediately inserting herself into HOA leadership with the aggressive efficiency of someone accustomed to getting her way. As a successful real estate agent, she understood property values, community standards, and the power of perception. Her perfectly maintained colonial painted in approved colors, landscaped with approved plants, decorated with approved seasonal display served as an example of neighborhood excellence. Patricia saw herself as Pinecrest Meadows' guardian, protecting residents from the chaos that came with relaxed standards. She'd been HOA president for 3 years, winning re-election on platforms of maintaining community values and protecting our investment. Her violation notices were legendary for their detail, and her follow-through relentless. The first violation notice appeared on Marcus's door Tuesday morning, citing excessive noise during quiet hours for Tommy's birthday party the previous Saturday. Patricia had apparently documented loud music, shouting, and splashing from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. during the HOA's designated quiet time of 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. "Dad, she's lying," Tommy said, reading over Marcus's shoulder. "We were inside watching movies by 7, and it was my birthday." The notice demanded Marcus appear at Thursday's emergency HOA meeting to explain his pattern of disruptive behavior. Pattern? This was his first alleged violation in 3 years of residency. Standing in his kitchen, staring at Patricia's signature on official letterhead. Marcus felt something shift. She'd made this personal. She'd involved his son. The HOA emergency meeting felt like a tribunal. Patricia sat at the head table with 2 board members, a stack of photos, and what appeared to be an audio recording device. 15 neighbors filled the community center, chairsome, curious, others clearly enjoying the drama. Mr. Reed. Patricia began, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Your property has become a disturbance to our peaceful community. These photos document the violation. She spread pictures across the table. Tommy Cannon bawling into the pool. Marcus grilling burgers. Neighbors' children playing in the backyard. Normal summer activities transformed into evidence of wrongdoing through Patricia's lens. The noise ordinance is clear. 8 p.m. means 8 p.m. Marcus studied the photos silently, his inspector's eye catching details Patricia had missed. Timestamps, shadows, background elements that told a different story than her narrative. When he finally looked up, his voice was calm, too calm. I understand the ordinance. Mrs. Whitmore, I helped write it 12 years ago when I worked for the city. The room went quiet. Patricia's confident smile wavered for just a moment. Going forward, I'll make sure every activity on my property follows every rule, regulation, and code to the letter. Thank you for reminding me how important compliance is in a community like ours. Something in his tone made Patricia shift uncomfortably. She'd expected anger, defensiveness, or apologies. This measured response felt like a threat wrapped in politeness. That night, Marcus pulled out files he hadn't touched in years: building codes, zoning regulations, and HOA enforcement protocols he'd helped establish during his city tenure. His expertise hadn't disappeared. It had just been dormant, waiting for the right motivation. He started with Patricia's property records, easily accessible through his old contacts in city planning. The documents revealed interesting details. Her house had been extensively renovated in the past 2 years, including a luxury gazebo completed just 6 months ago. The gazebo was gorgeous cedar construction, built-in lighting, stone foundation. It was also positioned exactly 18 inches from the property line, which violated the required 20-foot setback for permanent structures over 100 square feet. Marcus called Janet Chen, his former colleague now running code enforcement. Janet, hypothetical question. If someone built a gazebo without permits, no permits pulled for any gazebo construction on Maple Street in the past 2 years. Janet confirmed after checking the database. Why are you asking? Just curious about enforcement procedures. Still the same complaint process? Same as always. Complaint gets filed. We investigate within 48 hours. Violations get 30 days to comply or face fines starting at $15,000. Patricia wasn't finished. The next morning brought another violation, noticed this time for inappropriate landscaping materials, citing Marcus's gravel garden border, which she claimed violated the natural aesthetic standards outlined in the HOA covenant. By afternoon, she'd rallied 3 neighbors to sign a petition demanding Marcus's immediate compliance with community standards. The petition specifically mentioned his aggressive behavior at the HOA meeting, an ongoing pattern of defiance. She hand-delivered copies to every house on the street, accompanied by a printed summary of his violations and a reminder that property values depended on everyone maintaining our shared commitment to excellence. At the mailbox that evening, Patricia approached Marcus with her most patronizing smile. I hope you understand this isn't personal. Marcus, it's about protecting what we've all worked so hard to build here. I completely understand. Marcus replied, community standards matter. Everyone should follow the rules, all of them. Again, that strange calm in his voice made Patricia pause, but she was too committed to her campaign to consider whether she might be missing something important. Detective Ray Coleman knocked on Marcus's door Friday evening, still in uniform from his day shift. Heard Patricia's making your life interesting. Ray had lived next door for 8 years, raising 2 daughters who'd played in Marcus's pool countless times. He'd watched the divorce proceedings with quiet sympathy and Tommy's visits with protective interest. She's thorough, Marcus said diplomatically. She's also wrong about the noise ordinance. I was working that night. Your party ended well before 8. Want me to make a statement? Not yet, but I might need your help with something else soon. Marcus spent the weekend creating a comprehensive file on Patricia's property, photos taken from public areas, permit records, and HOA compliance documentation, going back 5 years. The pattern was clear. Patricia demanded perfection from others while cutting corners herself. The gazebo was just the beginning. Her fence height exceeded regulations by 6 inches. Her exterior lighting violated dark sky ordinances. Her landscaping included prohibited invasive species. Monday morning, Marcus would file his first complaint, but he'd be strategic, patient, and absolutely meticulous. Patricia had taught him the importance of following rules to the letter. Marcus's Monday morning call to Janet Chen was brief and professional. I need to file a formal complaint about an unpermitted structure at 847 Maple Street. Gazebo built without proper setbacks or permits. Marcus. That's Patricia Whitmore's address. You sure about this? Positive. I've got documentation. Within hours, Janet's inspection van appeared in Patricia's driveway. Marcus watched from his kitchen window as she measured distances, photographed the gazebo, and shook her head at Patricia's increasingly frantic explanations. The inspection report was damning. Major setback violation. No permits on file. Electrical work done without licensed contractor documentation. And foundation poured without proper drainage permits. Violation carried separate fines, with the total reaching $17,300. But Marcus wasn't finished. That afternoon, he filed complaints about the fence height, lighting violations, and prohibited plants. Each complaint was meticulously documented with photos, measurements, and specific code citations. His 12 years as a building inspector had taught him that successful enforcement required overwhelming documentation. Patricia had made the mistake of challenging someone who understood the system better than she did. When Detective Coleman stopped by that evening, Marcus showed him the growing file of violations. Jesus. Marcus. She's got no idea what's coming. Does she? She wanted everyone to follow the rules exactly. I'm just making sure the rules apply equally to everyone. Tuesday brought another surprise. Janet called with additional findings from Patricia's property inspection. Marcus, you're not going to believe this. Her electrical permits for the house renovation? They're fraudulent. The permits bore forged signatures from a contractor who'd been out of business for 3 years. Patricia had submitted them to avoid the higher costs of licensed electrical work, assuming no one would verify the documentation. That's a felony, Marcus said quietly. It gets worse. I pulled her other permits from the past 5 years. Pattern of falsified documentation. Unlicensed contractors. Work done without proper inspections. She's been systematically bypassing safety requirements. As a real estate agent, Patricia knew the system well enough to exploit it, but not well enough to avoid detection by someone with Marcus's expertise. Her cost-cutting shortcuts had created a paper trail of violations that could destroy her career. What's the exposure? Marcus asked. Criminal charge possible. Professional license suspension likely. Fines could hit 6 figures. Plus, if any of the unpermitted work caused problems, insurance won't cover damages. Marcus felt no satisfaction, just the calm certainty that comes with overwhelming evidence. Patricia had built her entire reputation on compliance and community standards, while secretly cutting every corner possible. Word spread quickly through Pinecrest Meadows' informal networks. Other neighbors began approaching Marcus with their own stories of Patricia's harassment, violation notices for minor infractions, threats to fine elderly residents who couldn't maintain perfect landscaping, intimidation tactics disguised as community protection. Mrs. Davidson, an 82-year-old widow, showed Marcus 15 violation notices Patricia had sent over 2 years for issues like mailbox paint fading and seasonal decoration timing violations. Detective Coleman confirmed what Marcus suspected. Patricia had been systematically targeting residents she perceived as vulnerable, elderly, or unable to fight back effectively. Thursday evening, Marcus laid out his strategy with military precision. Phase 1. Let the city violations process play out according to standard procedures. Phase 2. Document Patricia's retaliation when she inevitably escalated. Phase 3. File formal complaints with the State Real Estate Commission about her professional conduct. The beautiful thing, he explained to Detective Coleman, is that I don't have to do anything illegal or unethical. The system works perfectly when someone actually knows how to use it properly. Patricia had weaponized bureaucracy against others for years. Now it was her turn to face its full power. And Marcus was just getting started. Friday morning brought Patricia's worst nightmare, an official notice of violation from the city, requiring immediate compliance with setback requirements and permit applications, plus $17,300 in fines. Marcus was trimming hedges when Patricia stormed across the street. Violation notice clutched in her shaking hands. "You did this!" she screamed, abandoning all pretense of neighborhood civility. "You filed complaints about my gazebo." "I filed complaints about code violations," Marcus replied calmly, not stopping his gardening. The city investigated and found multiple infractions. That's how the system works. This is harassment. Revenge because you couldn't handle being held accountable for your noise violations. Mrs. Whitmore, I was never found guilty of any violations. Your complaint was investigated and dismissed because my party ended before 8 p.m. As Detective Coleman confirmed in his statement, Patricia's face went white. She hadn't known about Ray's official statement contradicting her timeline. "You can't prove anything about my permits." "I don't need to prove anything. The city has documentation of work done without permits, contractors with invalid licenses, and electrical signatures from businesses that didn't exist. Those are facts, not opinions." Patricia turned and stalked home, but Marcus could see her hands shaking as she fumbled with her door keys. The confident HOA president was beginning to understand that she'd chosen the wrong target. That afternoon, 3 more city inspection vehicles appeared on Maple Street, investigating Marcus's additional complaints about fence heights, lighting, and landscaping violations. Patricia's response was swift and desperate. Monday brought a barrage of retaliatory violations against Marcus. Grass height exceeding regulation standards, it was 1/4 inch over. Inappropriate mailbox positioning, 6 inches off center. An unauthorized security camera installation, his doorbell cam. But Marcus was ready. Each violation notice went directly to Janet Chen with documentation proving compliance, photos with measuring tape showing proper grass height, surveyor documentation of mailbox positioning, and city permits for security camera installation. She's panicking, Janet observed during her Wednesday visit to investigate Patricia's latest complaints. These are frivolous filings. If she keeps this up, she'll face harassment charges. More importantly, Patricia's retaliatory pattern was creating evidence for the state real estate commission complaint Marcus was preparing. Professional realtors weren't supposed to abuse official processes for personal vendettas. Thursday brought the fence violation fine, $3,000 for exceeding height restrictions. Friday delivered the lighting violation penalty, $2,000 for dark sky ordinance infractions. By the following Monday, Patricia was facing $22,300 in city fines. She tried appealing directly to the city council, claiming selective enforcement and personal harassment. But Janet Chen's documentation was flawless, and the violations were indisputable. "Mrs. Whitmore," the city attorney explained during her appeal hearing, "these codes apply equally to all residents. The fact that violations were discovered through complaints doesn't make the violations invalid." The neighborhood dynamics shifted dramatically as Patricia's legal troubles became public knowledge. Residents who'd lived in fear of violation notices began speaking openly about her intimidation tactics. Mrs. Davidson organized an informal meeting of Patricia's previous targets, documenting years of harassment disguised as HOA enforcement. 12 families had stories of excessive violation notices, threats, and intimidation. "She told me my Christmas decorations were culturally inappropriate for the neighborhood," shared Maria Santos, a Hispanic resident who'd received warnings about her Dia de los Muertos display. Detective Coleman confirmed that several residents had considered moving rather than continuing to face Patricia's harassment. She created a climate of fear over basic homeownership activities. The HOA board quietly scheduled an emergency meeting to discuss Patricia's leadership, with several members expressing concern about potential lawsuits from residents she'd targeted. 2 weeks after the first violation notice, Patricia made her final, desperate move. She hired a private investigator to dig into Marcus's finances, apparently hoping to find evidence of illegal activity that would discredit his complaints. The PI's background check revealed Marcus's impeccable professional record. his clean financial history despite the divorce, and his reputation as one of the most thorough and ethical inspectors in city history. More damaging to Patricia, the investigation confirmed that Marcus had indeed helped write many of the codes she'd been violating, making her claims of selective enforcement laughably false. Friday afternoon, Patricia appeared at Marcus's door with an ultimatum: "Drop your complaints, or I'll make sure you never work in this city again." Marcus's response was quiet and devastating. "Mrs. Whitmore, I think you should call your lawyer. The State Real Estate Commission will want to discuss your recent behavior." For the first time, Patricia looked genuinely afraid. The emergency HOA meeting Tuesday evening was packed with residents eager to witness Patricia's downfall. She arrived late, looking haggard and defensive, clutching a folder of documents she claimed would vindicate her actions. "Before we begin," Patricia announced, "I want everyone to understand that Mr. Reed has been conducting a personal vendetta against me using his previous city connections to file false complaints." Marcus stood calmly. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'd like to present evidence to the board and residents about the validity of these complaints." He spread Janet Chen's official inspection reports across the table, each one documenting clear violations with photographic evidence, measurements, and code citations. The gazebo setback violation, the fence height infraction, the electrical permit fraud. These aren't false complaints. Marcus continued. These are documented safety violations that have existed for years. The only reason they're being discovered now is because someone finally cared enough to report them. Patricia's voice cracked. "He's destroyed my property value. The fines will bankrupt me. You destroyed your own property value by building without permits and cutting safety corners." Marcus replied, "I simply reported what was already there." The room buzzed with murmurs as residents absorbed the scope of Patricia's violations. "Mrs. Davidson stood up. "Patricia, you sent me 15 violation notices in 2 years for minor issues while your own property was massively out of compliance?" The tension in the room was palpable, as other residents began voicing their own experiences. Mr. Johnson, a retired veteran, recounted how Patricia had threatened to fine him for flying an American flag that was allegedly 2 inches too large. Sarah Williams described receiving citations for her children's chalk drawings on their own driveway, which Patricia claimed were visual pollution. Janet Chen had been invited to present the city's findings officially. Her report was comprehensive and damning: $22,300 in fines, requirements for immediate permit applications, mandatory removal of non-compliant structures, an investigation of fraudulent documentation. More concerning, Janet continued, is the pattern of retaliatory filings Mrs. Whitmore made after legitimate complaints were filed against her property. The city doesn't tolerate abuse of our complaint process for personal vendettas. The State Real Estate Commission representative delivered the final blow. Based on evidence of using professional authority for personal harassment, Mrs. Whitmore's real estate license is suspended pending a full investigation. Using official processes to intimidate residents violates professional conduct standards. Patricia's face went ashen. Her career, her authority, her financial stability, everything was crumbling simultaneously. The HOA board voted unanimously to request Patricia's resignation as president, effective immediately. Her reign of neighborhood terror was officially over. The irony, Detective Coleman observed later, is that if she'd just left Marcus alone after the party, none of this would have happened. Her own vindictiveness triggered the investigation that exposed everything. Patricia's composure finally shattered completely. "This isn't fair. I was protecting our community. I was maintaining standards." "You were bullying people, Mrs. Davidson said firmly. "You weaponized rules against others while breaking them yourself." "Marcus, please." Patricia turned to him desperately. "I'll drop all complaints against you. I'll leave you alone. Just make this stop." Marcus's response was quiet but final. "Mrs. Whitmore, I can't make this stop. You broke laws, filed fraudulent documents, and harassed residents for years. The system is working exactly as it's designed to work." The consequences were swift and comprehensive. Patricia faced $22,300 in immediate fines, plus costs for bringing her property into compliance. Her real estate license suspension meant loss of income right when she needed it most. The fraudulent electrical permits triggered a criminal investigation that could result in felony charges. Her homeowner's insurance company was reviewing coverage for unpermitted work, potentially leaving her financially responsible for any future problems. Most satisfying to the neighborhood, the HOA elected Mrs. Davidson as interim president. With a mandate to review all violation notices issued during Patricia's tenure, within a month, Patricia's perfect suburban life had completely unraveled. The gazebo was demolished to comply with setback requirements. The fence was lowered to legal height. The illegal electrical work was torn out and redone by licensed contractors at enormous expense. Her real estate career was effectively over the license. Suspension would likely become permanent after the ethics investigation concluded. The criminal charges for permit fraud were proceeding, with prosecutors treating it as a serious case of systematic building code circumvention. Most devastating was the neighborhood's complete rejection of her authority. Residents she'd intimidated for years now openly discussed her hypocrisy. The woman who'd positioned herself as the guardian of community standards was revealed as its biggest violator. Marcus received apologies from neighbors who'd been afraid to support him earlier. "We knew she was excessive," admitted one resident. "But we never imagined she was breaking the same rules she used to terrorize the rest of us." Detective Coleman summed it up perfectly. She created a dictatorship based on fear, but forgot that dictators eventually face their own rules. The final insult. Patricia's house went on the market 6 weeks later. The disclosure requirements forced her to list all the code violations, permit issues, and compliance problems, devastating the property value she'd claimed to protect. The State Real Estate Commission's investigation expanded beyond Patricia's case, examining whether other agents had similarly abused HOA positions for professional advantage. Her behavior became a cautionary tale in ethics training for new licensees. The criminal case moved forward slowly but steadily. Prosecutors viewed systematic permit fraud seriously, especially when combined with evidence of intimidation and harassment. Patricia's lawyer was pushing for a plea agreement to avoid felony charges. The HOA implemented new procedures requiring board member disclosure of any personal violations before filing complaints against others. The Patricia rule became shorthand for preventing future abuse of authority. Property values in Pinecrest Meadows actually increased after Patricia's departure, as potential buyers learned about the new, reasonable HOA leadership focused on genuine community improvement rather than intimidation. Other neighborhoods throughout Virginia began reaching out to Marcus for consultation on HOA reform, impressed by how effectively he'd dismantled a corrupt system using nothing but knowledge and patience. His reputation as someone who could handle difficult situations with professionalism and expertise spread far beyond Pinecrest Meadows. For Marcus, the victory brought unexpected benefits beyond simple justice. His professional reputation was enhanced by the careful and methodical way he'd handled the situation. Word spread through construction and real estate circles about his expertise and integrity. His contracting business gained new clients who'd heard about his knowledge of building codes and proper procedures. "If Marcus Reed says it's compliant, you can trust it," became the consensus among local professionals. The business grew so successfully that Marcus was able to hire 2 full-time employees and expand into commercial projects, securing his financial future. Most importantly, Tommy's summer visits became peaceful again. The pool parties resumed without fear of harassment or frivolous complaints. Father and son could finally enjoy their time together without the shadow of Patricia's threats hanging over every gathering. Pinecrest Meadows transformed from a community ruled by fear into one focused on genuine cooperation. Mrs. Davidson's leadership style emphasized education over punishment, helping residents understand regulations rather than weaponizing them. The neighborhood became a model for HOA reform throughout the region. Property values rose, resident satisfaction improved, and the community attracted families seeking reasonable governance and authentic community spirit. Patricia taught us that rules without fairness become tyranny. Mrs. Davidson observed during her first official meeting as president, "We're committed to never forgetting that lesson." Marcus's calculated response to Patricia's harassment had accidentally triggered a broader movement toward HOA accountability and reform that extended far beyond their small suburban community. As for Patricia herself, the legal consequences continued mounting even months later. The criminal proceedings resulted in a guilty plea to fraudulent document filing, Earning her 2 years of probation and community service, she eventually relocated to another state. Her reputation permanently damaged, and her career in real estate finished. 6 months later, Marcus reflected on the entire situation while watching Tommy practice diving in their peaceful backyard pool. Patricia's harassment had seemed overwhelming at the time, but her downfall proved a crucial lesson about power, accountability, and the importance of understanding systems before trying to weaponize them. Sometimes the best defense against a bully isn't fighting back, it's understanding the rules better than they do, Marcus told Tommy. Patricia thought she could intimidate people by selectively enforcing regulations. She forgot that those same regulations applied to her. The American legal system, for all its flaws, still functioned when citizens understood their rights and responsibilities. Patricia's mistake was assuming her authority made her exempt from the standards she imposed on others. Knowledge really is power. That, Tommy observed, especially when someone's trying to abuse people who don't know their rights. Have you ever dealt with an HOA nightmare like Patricia? Someone who used their authority to harass and intimidate neighbors while secretly breaking the same rules they enforced on others? Drop your stories in the comments. I'd love to hear how you handled neighborhood tyrants. And if you enjoyed watching Patricia get her comeuppance, hit that notification bell. Trust me, we've got more stories about bullies getting exactly what they deserve. Speaking of people who abuse authority, next week, we're diving into the story of a restaurant manager who thought he could steal tips from servers and blame them for customer complaints. What he didn't know? One of those servers had a master's degree in labor law and access to the best employment attorney in the state. Let's just say his illegal tip-stealing scheme made Patricia's permit fraud look like a parking ticket.